Okay, we are live, episode 122 of the Gamer Librarian podcast. I am your host, Adrian, and for this week, we have something very, very special to talk about. And it's something that we have been hoping for the better part of, I would say 2 years since we really last saw anything newly Dragon Ball related. New. When I say new, I mean like new in the manga and the anime mostly. Sparking Zero is a phenomenal game, which is getting DLC, all kinds of additional content. There's even Dragon Ball Fighters, supposedly content being made, but that wasn't shown off at all. The only thing shown off for the 40th anniversary of Dragon Ball was two new anime announcements and a game for the most part. And so where does that leave us for Dragon Ball? Well, it leaves us in quite a pickle. There is some buzz going around that the credits for the new Dragon Ball Super arc, the Galactic Patrol arc, in terms of the anime, it's only really being credited, at least for now, to Akira Toriyama, which is fine. But I believe maybe 2 or 4 years ago, when the Galactic Patrol arc was being printed in the manga run, they it was made by Toritaro. It was written by him. He made it himself. He said that he wrote it himself, which is fine, right? Completely written based off of these characters. I think that's fine. I think both of them should have been credited, but that's where we are because we at least have confirmation of the Super anime continuing, which is awesome, right? I think that's something that fans have always wanted since the Tournament of Power ended, and there's been such a massive gap of media, unless you're talking about the new Broly movie or the superhero movie, which, for anime nowadays, we are in a big, big divide between what comes out as a movie or like an anime series TV show. And I think, things like Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, all these more modern manga, which are becoming movies. They have some of their arcs. Maybe the arcs are shorter or they're longer, and that's the justification for a movie. But we're not getting that televised type content. And as far as we know, the new Dragon Ball Super anime is gonna be an anime, a series for the Galactic Patrol. But will it be a movie? Maybe, right? I mean, the first half of Dragon Ball Super is either a TV show or movies. Like that's it. And I think that with them bringing back Dragon Ball Battle of the Gods and calling it Super Beerus, is that really something that we need to go back to and rehash? I mean, like Daimo was cool with its original content, obviously completely written by Akira Toriyama, which is insane. But for this anime, I think that it doesn't need to do the half movie, half TV show thing anymore. And I don't know what they're doing with the Beerus, remake, remaster, retelling. They're probably going to make things more contextual. I think that Beerus is going to play a bigger role in the future of the series because of this movie, kind of giving him a little more fleshed out background, a little more place in the story. But I'm not excited for that. That to me is not exciting as a Dragon Ball fan. We've been there. This movie is like almost 10 years old. We've been here. We need to start doing the Moro arc, which is coming. There needs to be the gas fights, and then what we've been waiting on for the manga, Black Frieza. Like, I was so surprised that this weekend there was not a announcement or even something talking about the manga returning. The manga probably will return sometime in the middle of the Dragon Ball Super anime airing, which is unfortunate because it's been a very, very, very long time. Like, we were talking about this forever, and I think that based on how it currently ended, it's not interesting to wanna be like, "Oh, I wanna get back into Dragon Ball," and then it's just gonna be on a hiatus. Like, Dragon Ball Super doesn't have a real ending in the same way that Z, even GT has an ending, right? Dragon Ball itself, that was already, like, cut and dry. There was nothing really from Dragon Ball besides, like, the origin of Goku, I guess, that really mattered, that was a mystery, and then it got fleshed out in Z with the Frieza saga, a little bit of the Red Ribbon stuff, and then Buu was, like, more add-on new stuff. GT completely new, and I think that for what it is, Dragon Ball Super should have a real ending. It should be able to get that, and we're obviously gonna get that at some point. Maybe they're doing something like what is happening with my, Hunter x Hunter, where the drafts and the writing is being done in, like, big batches so that they have stuff ready to put out all at once. That's what I think, which is incredible, but ultimately, this return for Dragon Ball is not what we were expecting, right? I think the anime or a movie coming back was obviously there. A new game is phenomenal. Now, this game called Project Year or Age 1000. Dragon Ball years, their timeline, they call them ages, like their years are ages. So Dragon Ball proper takes place sometime in like the 700 ages, right? Goku's like around 40 or 50, so it takes place like the early 700s and then the later almost 750 years with wherever Dragon Ball Z or GT or Super take place. And that's all cool, right? I don't really care about timelines and continuity. I think that the creators can talk about what is canon or whatever all they want, but I think it's up to the fans to consider what's canon or not, right? If we're playing games like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and there's like 1,000 characters all fighting each other from different eras and stuff, like to me, that's the sandbox pinnacle of like your fandom creation stuff. I think that's really cool. And I don't want to see anything with like GT's not canon, Super's not canon. I don't want to see none of that. To me, it's all canon. Whatever it is, I consider it canon. But this game apparently might be like an MMO type thing. It's probably gonna be more in line with like Xenoverse, which is awesome. And who can really say? For this game, it's definitely cool. I'm more interested in the year 1000 lore aspect of it rather than like whatever gameplay it might have or anything like that. Because obviously it's going to play like Sparking Zero or Xenoverse. That is a guaranteed. But the manga is not coming back for a while, which is upsetting. But we still have this to, you know, look forward to, keep us entertained for the meantime. Maybe we'll get another movie, something cool, a little spin-off or something. Because now the Dragon Ball Super arcs are made into movies. Not the Broly one, but Superhero was a movie first, then it was slowly, made through the manga. Uh, Battle for the Gods and what is the other one? Resurrection F. Those are part of the anime series and then also made into movies. I want that to stop. I want either just an anime or a movie to go back to like what you get with the old Dragon Ball movies or One Piece and Naruto. And it's like the movies were like an extra little bit of content. Call it filler or non-canon, what you want, but at the very least, it's more of something. Whether it's like Turles, whether it's BoJack or Harudagon or Legacy of Goku, like all those movies are great. And I think that just adapting the source material into a movie just to make money is not the wave. This is not what I think anime should be or how it should be, created, promoted, or adapted or whatever. I would like the full manga to have its adaptation before we start moving into other spin-offs or anything like Daima, right? I enjoyed Daima so much. It was incredible. But I would 100% prefer a real adaptation of the Galactic Patrol arc, the Gas arc over Daima. I would have much preferred that. And here we are. This is just another day where we get to look forward to Dragon Ball stuff, which is insane. So probably this year we're gonna have a little bit of intermittent Dragon Ball news coming out in terms of the new anime and its Beerus movie, and then obviously the game. We have always been diligent on the manga side, and until that comes back, I don't really know what else to say about Dragon Ball. Sparking Zero and Fighters, they're phenomenal games. Phenomenal games. Xenoverse is cool on its own, but if a Dragon Ball game were to come back, I would like it to be something more like Legacy of Goku, maybe like a better Kakarot in some ways. Because I always thought Kakarot was going to be like the third person 3D action, really, really stylized Dragon Ball game, very similar to Legacy of Goku. And it wasn't. It was nothing like Legacy of Goku. It was super trash. Not a big fan. But then we get games like the Dragon Ball Escape by Dead by Daylight game, which is cool, right? I didn't play it, but that is a very cool concept for a massively popular franchise. And one day maybe I'll play it. I think it went free to play. But for Dragon Ball games, that's really just about it, unless we're talking about the um, card mobile games and things like that. So that is the news for Dragon Ball. I mean, there's just so much to look forward to, but it's not necessarily what I wanted. I wanted the manga to be confirmed to continue because it's been forever, which is, concerning, disheartening. And I think that like if at some point, whether because I don't know how the rights work now that Toriyama is gone and it's now fully being made by Toyotaro and it's still published by everyone else. So will they cut him and just stop the manga? I hope the manga has good enough sales to justify continuing, but I don't I don't know. I hope that if it does return, we get a more tense style story, more in line with Z than Super. Super is a little bit laid back. Some of the stakes aren't really there, and with Goku and Vegeta kind of losing fights more recently, it has an interesting dynamic. So I think it'd be same for it to end. It'd be crazy if manga like Black Clover reached its ending and Super never did in that regard, just to really like compare the two. Insane, insane. But that really is it for Dragon Ball, right? It's just the two new anime, I guess, and a video game, which is great. Awesome to have more Dragon Ball content, whether it's animated or video game. Just still super cool. Just not the manga. Very, very weird how that wasn't even like mentioned in some fashion. Something else that we have to talk about. Something else incredibly, incredibly important. And to me, it's just like, what is Microsoft doing? What is Microsoft's real goal here? And I think their goal is to ensure that their Game Pass, their cloud or whatever, their store system is as open as possible to get as many people to subscribe to it. And to be honest, an aspect of that is that they're going multi-plat with Fable being on PS4 or PS5, with the new Halo game coming on the PS5. Obviously, the last Gears game was like the remaster for one was on PS5. Safe to say, if an eventual Gears of War E-Day would be on PS5. Now, as somebody who owns a PS5, who also owns several Xbox using systems and Series X and PC, I don't know if like that's justifiable. Because if somebody has a PS5 and they only really want one Xbox Game Pass game and it's on PS5, they're not going to subscribe to Game Pass. Because someone like me, half my gaming library from Game Pass, I already own, already played, don't want to play again. So that justification isn't really there. And we had an Xbox Dev Direct earlier this week. I believe it was like Saturday or something. And that Dev Direct only featured 4 video games. 4. Now, I'm not gonna harp on 2 of them because Forza is a legacy game. I don't necessarily play a lot of racing games, but for those realistic racing games, there's people out there that will defend those and champion them or criticize them when needed. And then there's the Pottery game, which I will say looks incredibly fun. I think as a creative type co-op game, that looks awesome. So I don't really want to criticize those 2 specific games right now. And to touch on one, the new Game Freak game, the title of it escapes me. I think I can have it right here. Beast of Reincarnation. Insane to think that this is made by Game Freak. Insane to think that Game Freak, a company that makes the highest grossing selling video game of all time or media franchise, right? Just at least the video game aspect of it is making a very well looking, like very modern graphics type looking video game. And I believe there's a lot of notions that this game is made with third party like contributions or artists or, whatever. I still find it pretty egregious that their name is on the newer Pokemon games and this game. Like, that is so incredibly egregious to be like, "Here's the Pokemon games that we're just gonna let look like absolute dog shit. We're gonna make them look like the worst games on the Switch. But here's this, brand new action game that's gonna be on almost everything," right? Xbox exclusive for now, for most of its lifetime, but it'll probably be multi-plat at some point. I don't even know, and I'm not gonna say it's a bad looking game, it looks fun. But I think when it comes from that pedigree of Game Freak and there's that other history behind it, you kinda look at it and you go, right? You're just like, "Why? You put all your time in this, but Pokemon looks like that." To me, that is just not the way it should be for third person action games. I'm sure it's fun, and maybe it's a reason people to subscribe to Game Pass, but I don't think it'll be a purchase for me right now. And there's one last game that should be talked about when it comes to the Dev Direct, and that's Fable. Because at the very least, this is the only Xbox game that we know of, that we definitively know of, has actual gameplay, has development time in it. The only other two, right? I could be, you know, blanking out on other ones, but the only other two that I can think of that are even in this type of popularity, this type of demand from players, Elder Scrolls and Gears of War. And we could talk all we want about Elder Scrolls, but it is egregious that they didn't have anything for Gears of War. And we're probably going to be seeing that at Summer Games Fest. I don't want to wait that long. That is a very long time. I think this would have been the perfect time to show off another little teaser for E-Day, something maybe story related if it's a cinematic, and at the very least, maybe like a snippet of how the gameplay works or in game, because we're talking about Gears of War E-Day. Gears 1 had a very like gothic horror spooky type vibe to it. In terms of like a militaristic shooter, it had more scary, tense moments in that game compared to the later in the series. And maybe in some way they can keep that alive, but E-Day is a hectic, hectic, hectic time. And it's incredible to think about how that's going to work in terms of a game standpoint because they don't know how to fight the Locust by that point. Like by the time Gears of War 1 starts, it's 18 years into that war. I don't know what to say about that. But Fable. Fable is a massive, massive popular Xbox game. And it earned its spot to be where it is in terms of all the other Xbox games that are out there. Fable earned its spot because it has one of the greatest open worlds to experience, not just as a single player. But I could be wrong with the first one, but I know 2 and 3 have co-op. If Fable 4 does not have co-op, I don't want anything to do with it. It looks, great. It looks like a well-polished Hogwarts Legacy in terms of its art style, right? But everything else that is cool about Fable is pretty generic or common nowadays for open world RPGs. And yeah, right, you make decisions whether it's from a text box that you click for dialogue or whatever, or it's like in-world actions. To me, not necessarily all that big of a difference. And maybe the scale of what we think they're talking about for Fable is small in what they've, you know, made it seem to be. I have doubts. I have doubts. And I think that it's just worthy of accepting those doubts, worthy of accepting that this game might be worthy of criticism, or at the very least, doesn't hold the same kind of candle or pedigree to its last few iterations. I understand that two was like one and two are massive in terms of its like role playing scope, and a lot of things from those games will transfer over here. But will Fable 4 be able to recapture what that experience is really like? I don't necessarily know. And if it doesn't have co-op, then I don't really know how it could do that, especially in today's landscape of if the single player game isn't necessarily like 70 or around 70 hours, is it really worth that full price tag? Maybe co-op will come out in like a future update, but that is something that is, you know, a kind of big turnoff for single players who are going to play at day one. At the very least, for Xbox, we saw something, which is incredible to say. When Fable was teased forever ago, I thought we would never see it again. And here it is in the flesh. And this game, and to be honest, it's Gears of War, that's one of them. But the Elder Scrolls, it's make or break for some of these games. And that's where I think we're seeing a lot less of Microsoft. It's so they can focus on these far more massive titles to ensure success. But is that the wave? I don't know. I don't know if that's really the way that it should go. It being on PlayStation and Steam and all that stuff, that is a great, great, great positive for gamers, for the developers to be able to at least like spread their game out, recoup some cost at the very least. Did I think we would get Fable 4 ever? No. I mean, that to me is just incredibly insane. I've only really played Fable 1 and 2 to full completion. I played 3 once, and that's basically where it ended. I don't necessarily know what else to say for, Fable. It's co-op. I think co-op is something that's going to be incredibly influential to the success of this game because the last one's had co-op. So if they don't announce co-op by the time it launches, I'm not sure what's going to happen for Fable. Now, game announcements, right? That is something to be looking forward to. We have a whole year of game announcements, two big events, Summer Game Fest and Game Awards coming out this year, hopefully. And whether or not we're going to see these games again before then is up in the air. But Xbox's survival, I think, definitely hinges on whether or not Gears of War E Day is a great game just overall, It's being multiplayer. It's going to have multiplayer. I think that's awesome. But Elder Scrolls, can they really do the Skyrim again? Are they going to fall into pit traps that are pretty common for open world games? Are they going to make it like a Ubisoft game? Are they going to add in like battle pass season stuff to this game? Who knows? Who knows? I think that what Xbox has going for them is their massive catalog, but I don't think they're utilizing it very well. Like, why isn't World of Warcraft still on Game Pass yet? Like, you can't be making that much money. No one really cares about World of Warcraft like that. So it's incredible to see just where gaming came from and how we ended up here, because it's changing every week. So I would talk about it here every Monday because it's just incredible to talk about, incredible to see these changes. So releases, video game releases for Cult of the Lamb, we had a DLC, Wool Haven. We've been waiting for this for months, and I got my friend a copy of it so we can do co-op, which is going to be awesome. And this is a great DLC for what it adds. I think that its ranching stuff is awesome. I would have loved to have the opportunity to ranch early on. I kind of find it to be uh, a little bit of a shame that you can only access some of the DLC stuff by the time you've maybe beaten the base game, which is standard. But for ranching, if I was redoing a playthrough of this, would I want to have to sit through building my whole commune camp town again while doing the four main runs again? Not really. If I couldn't do the ranching all at once, to me, that's just not, you know, enjoyable. It doesn't really seem like it's worth my time. But you can just do it on your base game, and you get a whole new area to expand your town and start placing your animals and stuff. All that's really great. What is also cool is the weather system. Is that you're not locked in the winter. It cycles. You have like summer and winter and all that stuff, and you have to have a little more survival tactics to how you play the game. And there's shorter runs. There's more options when you go and do the runs for Woolhaven, but all the areas are like very short. You're not spending like 15 or 20 minutes on runs. It's like more like, 5 or 10, which is cool. So this is a DLC that we're going to try and complete throughout the week, obviously, but there is another update that came out, which I will be far more enthusiastic of, and that is Ball Pit. Ball Pit got 2 new characters and 4 or 8 balls. I forget what it is, but that is incredibly awesome. To see that this is a free update just in general. We're gonna get 3 more, and this might be Woolhaven's last DLC. For other games, there's the Battlefield 6 season 2 that's coming out, I think February. That'll probably be the last or next time that I play Battlefield 6, and depending on if I like the map or any of the other additions, we might just, shelve that game because there's other games to play. There's all kinds of other stuff coming out. Resident Evil 9 also comes out, I think, February. So, single player games still going strong. But, that's still January for this year. We didn't do the Metal Gear finish that we wanted to, but no word on Metal Gear Solid 4. And I would like to do that at some point, but, you know, time is what it is. Now, for the future, not just video games we talk about here, but I want to try and get back into books. And there's one in particular that I want to read, and that's Control Freak by Cliff Bleszinski. Control Freak is about his life in gaming, all the way up from, I believe, working on Gears, working on the Epic Unreal Engine, and then Fortnite, which is an incredible run. Incredible run. So I only really want to see like what his experience was. I think it'd be really cool to talk about here on the podcast. And for books, that's really just it, right? Comic books, we have to catch up on Absolute DC. Kind of just been, switching on and off between wanting to do DC Absolute Comics and then manga. Manga has been massive for us here on the podcast the last few years. Just the amount of volume that we've read is incredible. So we've been reading Black Lagoon. Black Lagoon has been incredibly fun. It's a little slow paced in terms of its like middle. We're only on chapter 68 now, but it's been fun. I don't remember any of this in terms of my minimal experience with the anime, but Black Lagoon has been something that's been really enjoyable because it's one of the few mangas that's set in like the real world, and there's no magic or like extra like just content to it that's like fictional. Not like it's all just real. This is just real references, real, organizations. I think it's incredible fun. I wish that we get more manga like this, just a little more modern, realistic type of stories than like magic swords and giant monsters and stuff like that. And, to wrap it up, we could talk about 28 years later. I mean, that movie was far more exciting than I ever thought it would have been. It was just well paced. It was great to look at. And it was very short. It didn't feel like it overextended itself for some things. It was a little stupid at some times, but you kind of got to let stupid things happen for the story to roll out. I thought it was great. I'm thoroughly looking forward to whatever sequel they're doing for 28 Days Later. And so we also watched Smashing Machine. It's a movie based on the life of Mark Kerr, a MMA martial arts wrestler, and that was incredibly sad. Very, very sad movie. But we have Scream to look forward to coming out next year. Not next year, next month. Next month is February. Yeah, I think it comes out February like 27th, 29th. And yeah, that's really just it, right? For video games that we're doing, movies that we're seeing, it's incredible. But really the biggest news was Dragon Ball and the Xbox Dev Direct because like what else are we gonna talk about? But I think that's really just it. That's probably all we got here on the podcast. What I do have is a few articles, but then nothing really, It's all just pretty mundane stuff. Suppose we can cut it here. Next week we'll probably be talking more about Ball Pit, and maybe we'll do some Metal Gear or something. Who's to say? It's been a good couple years doing the podcast, just talking about literally nonsense here with these video games and everything else. Because I think that when it comes to the bigger games that are being produced, it comes with far more criticism, like Fable, right? I try not to be extremely critical. Like I'm not trying to say it's ugly or anything, but you know, if your whole game is going to be like these well polished looking cinematic moments, what's the gameplay would look like? And gameplay for Fable pretty minuscule, right? In terms of like attack and defending and magic stuff. That from I remember very unflashy for the most part. But there's small additions like turning people into chickens, kicking them, which is awesome. I just don't know if new games can really continue to herald that type of experience that you get from like older games. Something to like, contrast is Ball Pit. Ball Pit is a very, very small arcade game, but it offers loads of replayability. It's definitely just something to talk about. I just don't know if Xbox can really keep their foot in the game with what they have in their catalog. We have the Fallout show that obviously is doing pretty well, and there's even teases of remasters for the Fallout games 3 in New Vegas. Incredible, but it's not Oblivion. It's not Elder Scrolls 6, and that is just a shame, to be honest, because Fallout is like almost 20 years old. There was a 20-year-old games. Fallout 3 came out in 2008. Fallout New Vegas came out like 2011. So like 10, almost 20-year-old games. It's not necessarily anything to look forward to. I want to see what the new RPG experience is like. And maybe Fable will have something that really elevates Xbox and that single player open world type world changing experience. And for me, that experience has already reached its pinnacle with games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. And for something they're going to say that's a leg up to these for those games for BioWare's Dragon Age Mass Effect is that those choices transcend each game. Your choices in Mass Effect still have an impact and matter in Mass Effect 3, and even to some small degree your choices from Origins and Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition still matter in Veilguard. However much you dislike Veilguard, you know, those are the video games where your choices can transcend into the next game. Can't do that with Fable 1, 2, and 3. You just can't. And to me, that's like where the divide is for what quality gaming is now. It's, you know, what do gamers expect? Well, gamers expect fun. Gamers expect good experiences. And I think if all the good experiences are held in the past, and that's all we're looking forward to is remakes and retelling of the past, stories, then I don't want to see any more sequels or spin-offs or remasters. No, no, no. I want wholly original games. I want games that are bringing fresh new experiences, takes, stories, all that kind of stuff. But, it's just another week. Anyway, peace. Share